Bracha from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. We are privileged with the special blessing of God to continue our joint study of Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot. Tonight's study, Chapter 2, Mishna 15, Part 3. Please make sure that the text that I'm reading corresponds to your edition. The first words that I'm reading in the middle of the Mishnah are Ve'hevei Mitchmem K'neged Uran Shel Chachamim. Look for that because, as I mentioned over and over again in Chapter 2, the numbering systems are different in the different editions. Thank you so much for joining. Ve'hevei, we're learning the teachings of one of the great students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We're in the middle of the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer, and he teaches Ve'hevei mitchmem k'neged uran shel chachamim. A person should have the type of relationship with sages. A person should be close enough to rabbis, to rebbitzins, to mechanechim, to mashpi'im, to morim, to melamedim. It is very important. It is very important that a person gets close enough to feel the great warmth of Torah from the Torah teacher. And so Rabbi Eliezer, who had the privilege of studying under the close connection that he had under the tutelage of his great Rav, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, teaches the world here in Pirkei Avot. Get close enough to your rabbi, warm yourself, mitchmem, from the word chom. Warm yourself, enjoy the heat of the fire of the sages. There's great warmth, there's great levels, there are great levels of comfort, and maybe in this very, very cold world of existence, if you're looking for a warm spot, if you're looking for a spot where you'll feel the heart and you'll feel that fiery flame of love, the fiery flame of connection, he recommends Ve'hevei mitchmem k'neged uran shel chachamim. Get to the ur, get to the fire of the sages. We have something called the eish. Mimino eish dat lamo. The Torah is like a fire. The teachings of Torah are like fire. So get close to the sages, and when you're sitting very close to the fire, you'll enjoy the warmth. And then he says, however, be careful. You know, if you get too close to the fire, God forbid you can get burnt. Ve'hevei zahir b'gachaltan shelo tikaveh. A person has to demonstrate certain levels of caution, because sometimes getting too close to the fire can be damaging. Because a person, God forbid, can get burnt by the coals. Be aware of the glowing coals of your great masters, of your great teachers, so that the person will not get scorched in terms of his or her pursuit of getting ever so close to these teachers. There's a concept of getting close, however, making sure that you keep a safe distance. And it's this balance that Rabbi Eliezer is trying to teach us. Now, this is a balance over and over again. We learned this principle in Pirkei Avot in so many different ways. Torah itself is always striking that delicate balance. How far do you go this way, and how far do you go that way? And where does it meet in the middle? Get close, but not too close. Feel the warmth, but don't get burnt. And there is this concept that's well known of familiarity breeds contempt. Sometimes you're so close that you take advantage of this closeness, or you lose a certain level of respect that's necessary for your proper relationship with the great teacher. Get close, says Rabbi Eliezer, מתחמם, enjoy the closeness, but be careful. Be careful when approaching the great Chachamim. Be careful when getting very close to the great sages. Perhaps you can err in belittling them precisely because of the closeness that you have developed. You would never dare talk to them in such a way if you didn't develop this closeness. But it's precisely because you were close and you had this relationship of מתחמם. It's this מתחמם relationship which brings you sometimes to speak disrespectfully, disparagingly, rudely, sometimes even in a cruel fashion, sometimes in an improper fashion, to the people who are so great and so dedicated. Be careful. A person on the one hand is encouraged. We encourage all the students of the world. You have a Rabbi? Wow. You're so lucky you have a Rab. You have a Rab, you have a Morei Derech, you have a Mashpia. Get close. But how do you maintain that balance? For those of us who have ever learned how to drive different kinds of cars, I remember I always was thinking when I was learning how to drive a stick shift, how much do you press down on the ignition, and how much do you let go? And sometimes you get stuck. If you press too much in one way or release too much in the other side, and you need a balance. For me, learning how to drive when I came to Israel many years ago, thank God today most of the cars are automatic. But when I first came, so I had to learn how to drive with the gears and shifting the gears. And it was a religious experience for me always. Like the car got stuck many times because I couldn't figure out the right balance of how much to press down and how much to let go. I think that's the challenge of Rabbi Eliezer. There are some people, when they study Tanakh, they study the Bible. Now, we encourage more than anyone else in the whole world. The Jewish people are the people of Tanakh. We love learning Tanakh. That's the essence of our being. That's the essence of the world. The Tanakh has been, printed more editions than any other book in the entire world. Not even a close second. It's been translated more times. It's the book. However, when you read Tanakh and you read about the great fathers and mothers of our nation, let's say, as an example, get close to them. Feel close to our father Abraham. Feel close to our מתחמם. מתחמם כנגד אורן של חכמים. Feel close to our mother Sarah. Understand and develop a closeness in studying about Rivka and about Rachel and about Leah and about Yitzchak and about Yaakov. Get close to these people. Feel close and feel the warmth of these individuals. However, how close should you get to Abraham and Sarah? Maybe it can become problematic. Maybe, God forbid, one can begin violating the second teaching of Rabbi Eliezer, where a person is enjoined and very carefully, lovingly warned, Zahir, Havei Zahir, B'gachaltan shelo tikaveh. Havei Zahir b'gachaltan. It means, if you start talking about Abraham and Sarah, the same way you talk about the neighbor down the block, and you're so close, after all, you're reading all day about Father Jacob and Mother Rachel, and you have your own insights into maybe the problematic aspects of Jacob and Rachel, or maybe you have something to say about the marriage of Isaac and Rebekah, or maybe you have a certain critique or criticism of Abraham and Sarah. I'm not saying that there's no room for such activities. However, be careful. Be careful. You want to get close to them. You think that you're going to start analyzing and bringing critical words about our father, about our great teacher Moses, or our great teacher Aaron, and you think that they did this wrong, and they did that wrong. If you would be the leader of the Jewish, of course, everything would be so much better and you feel comfortable doing this because you're so close to Moses and Aaron. You're so close. Excuse me. You're so close to the great main characters of the Torah. Be careful. Be careful. I think also, even in terms of what I've experienced, thank God, in seeing the contrast between different levels and schools of thought of how close should students in a yeshiva, how familiar should students in a yeshiva, for instance, get to their rabbis and rebbes. In certain schools of thought, even in halakha, should the rabbi, say the chief rabbi of the institution or the chief rabbi of the city or the chief rabbi, should they just be sitting around and enjoying lunch at the same table with everybody else? You know, you have a lunch period, and this was the rabbi who just gave a shiur to the 1,000 students in the yeshiva, and now he's sitting next to you and pass the ketchup. Can I please have some? Can I please have some coleslaw? A few more, salad. Yeah, and you can claim this develops a certain level of closeness, a certain bond. We had a group of soldiers, thank God. God gave us the privilege of having a certain group of soldiers joining us. And I noticed, I told them to sit down at different tables. And I saw some of the leading officers didn't want to sit down. There were empty seats. And I couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe they had sat so many hours during the day. And it turns out that there's some kind of law in the army that, depending on the rank, it's prohibited for certain kinds of officers to sit with certain kinds of privates or new. It is claimed that in certain army rules, and I guess, it's a different system, but in certain systems of halakha as well, maybe there should be this distance. Maybe, you can't be too familiar. You can't be too familiar. In many places in the world, they have a special room for the rabbis, a special room for the teachers, for the instructors, and they eat lunch separately, than the student body. Is that good? Is that bad? Or is it better? No, put one hand around this shoulder and one hand around that shoulder, and we're all one part of a happy family, and we're all celebrating lunch together, and we're all eating snacks together. It's not so simple. I remember that in the United States, in many yeshivot, I saw great rabbanim playing basketball with their students. I came to Eretz Yisrael. I love Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael be blessed. I saw that it was rather different in many schools here. It's rare to find that. Maybe today it's a little different than when we first came, but it's rare to find in the traditional yeshivot a prominent Rosh Yeshiva who will take off his jacket and roll up his sleeves and start playing and shooting baskets, or running and playing soccer or football with his students, or softball or baseball. So what's a higher level? And I could argue both positions, and I've heard both positions being defended. On the one hand, what's the best way to get close to someone? We're actually involved in the same sports activity, and even if you don't relate to anything I said in the shiur on Gemara or on Chumash or on Navi or in Halakha or in Hashkafa, but when we're shooting the baskets together, okay, that's a great bond. That's a mitchmem, keneged uran shel chachamim. However, I heard one rabbi once say, they asked him, what do you think about rabbis playing ball with the students? He said, well, one thing I know is they shouldn't do it if they don't really know how to play ball well, because that could cause a great desecration of God's name. If every time he gets up at the plate, he strikes out, or he doesn't know how to catch a ball, I don't think that'll bring any closeness anyway. But we're talking about someone who is skilled in this area. And I've seen two approaches. I would say in the Israeli yeshivot, there's more of a of an approach of be careful with gachaltan shaloti kaveh. Keep a certain level of distance. In Torah, we can find both levels of reflection, and both positions can surely be defended. It's similar to a parent and a child. Can parents and children become buddies? Can they become best friends? There are those who would say, oh, maybe. If you remember when Yaakov was encountering Lavan at the end of one of the sections of study, if you remember when Yaakov leaves Lavan's house at the end of Parashat Vayetze, it says that Yaakov called his brothers. Vayikra Yaakov le'echav. He had no brothers. He had one brother, and he surely wasn't with him in Lavan's house. Who were these brothers? And according to one interpretation, you can see it's quoted. The phrase appears twice, but at least in one of the two times, Rashi says his brothers are his children. Children, brothers. Can there be a point in life where a child is like a brother or is like a sister? And exactly how does that fit into this? It's part of the extension of the same teaching. Get very close to your father. Get very close to your mother. But is there a point where maybe speaking inappropriately to them, or speaking in a way which will hurt their feelings, or speaking in a way where you're expressing you know so much more than they do, runs contrary to the pathways of Torah? This has to be examined, and this is Rabbi Eliezer's brilliant teaching. Rabbi Eliezer, elsewhere in our literature, we're studying Pirkei Avot. However, in Tractate Eruvin, for those people interested, you can look it up. I think it's on page 63a, Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. In Eruvin, we find that it's precisely Rabbi Eliezer, our teacher, the teacher of this Mishnah, who teaches us. Kach mekubelani. He says, I have a clear tradition. Kol hamoreh halacha bifnei rabo. Difficult for me to read the words, but I'll try anyway. Difficult because it's very harsh. Kach mekubelani. Kol hamoreh halacha bifnei rabo chayav mitah. If someone issues a legalistic halachic ruling, he renders a definitive position where something has to be decided in the presence of his teacher, in the presence of his rabbi. This is considered a very serious violation. The rabbi is sitting here. Who are you? You're rendering opinions in front of your rabbi? Kol hamoreh halacha b'fnei rabo, says Rabbi Eliezer. I have a clear tradition. Chayav mitah. Chayav mitah. On some level, has violated the law to the point where maybe his life is on the line. Let's be careful. Why would someone feel comfortable enough to, okay, the rabbi's sitting there, but I know, because if a person feels, this is my friend, my teacher, my buddy, my friend, my brother. Okay, so he's much older than me, and he's much more learned than me, but we're so close, and I've been enjoying his warmth. I've been enjoying the warmth of the relationship. I've been enjoying the warmth of the relationship for so long. So I take certain steps that I wouldn't take. And I feel certain levels of behavior are acceptable that I would not feel if I wouldn't feel so close. Maybe the student feels so close that no longer does he have to show that great awe of respect for the great teacher. And maybe that's problematic. And it's Rabbi Eliezer who teaches, the same teacher of our Mishna, that if you study the story in the Torah, there were two great people, very great people, Their names are Nadav and Avihu, two of the children of our great teacher and leader Aharon HaKohen, two of the sons of Aaron. Remember, there's a story in the book of Leviticus where they bring some kind of strange fire before God. Remember the story? Yes. And chapter 10 of Vayikra. And what happened there? What's happening behind the scenes? Rabbi Eliezer teaches, our teacher, the teacher of our Mishna. Rabbi Eliezer teaches, Lo metu b'nei Aharon. What was the core of their mistake? Ad shehoru halacha b'fnei Moshe Rabban. Nadav and Avihu died when they rendered a legal halachic decision in the very presence of their teacher, their rabbi of Moshe. Now, they were very close to Moshe. Moshe was their personal teacher. We have traditions that Moshe taught them. In one place, they're almost referred to as his children, even though they were Aharon's children. He felt so close to them. He was their uncle. He was his brother's son. I guess at a certain point, Nadav and Avihu felt, yes, Moshe is the teacher, but, we also can render opinions. Be careful. Be careful. Havei mitchmem k'neged Oran, but v'havei Zahir b'gachaltan shelo tikaveh. It's so interesting to me that in that story, it's literal, the fire. Right here, he's giving here in our Mishnah, he's using fire as some kind of model. Be careful not to get burned. There, they literally got burned. That's what it says. Vateitze eish milifnei Hashem, vatochal otam. And a fire came forth from before God, and the sons of Aaron were consumed. Vayamutu lifnei Hashem, and they died. So maybe, according to at least Rabbi Eliezer, the teacher of this teaching, maybe we have to be careful of how close to get and how familiar to get. There are people who feel it's okay to start calling their great teacher by the first name because we're really close friends. Yeah. At what point is that acceptable? At what point is that problematic? That has to be examined carefully. And maybe a good model to study would be planet Earth and the sun. And maybe we have to figure out exactly how God created this world. I read more than once. The distance between the sun and the earth, the distance between the earth and the sun, is exactly positioned that if it would be any further away from each other, if this distance would be any greater, we would all freeze to death on this planet. We need the warmth. We need the combustion. We need that uran, the fire of the sun to keep warm. However, if we'd be any further away in terms of distance, if we would be further away, we would not be able to enjoy the warmth of the sun. If we'd be any closer to the sun is beautiful. One of the greatest creations of God. So maybe we should get closer and closer. I once read that we would all burn to death. Even a small fraction of distance, even a small fraction of closeness, closer to the sun, we would not be able to survive on planet Earth because we would all be burned to death. That sounds to me what he's trying to teach. A certain closeness, but a certain distance at the same time. I do hope that each person in his life, in her life, is able to find the proper way to properly fulfill this great challenge and this great teaching of our great teacher, Rabbi Eliezer, to be able to get very close. And it's important to get close. And people lose out religiously because they're not close. There were thousands of rabbis here in Yerushalayim. You can't find one that you relate to. Hundreds of thousands of people that have so much to teach you. Not just a superficial level. Get close. But how do you get close without getting too close and overstepping your boundaries? That's what Rabbi Eliezer is teaching us, and I do hope that each of us can find the way to properly fulfill his word. Thank you so much for listening. Shalom v'bracha.